19 years. That is how long a Shani Mahadasha runs, the Saturn period. Only one period in the whole system is longer, Venus at 20. And Venus is a gentle planet. Saturn is not. So of the 9 Mahadashas, this is the longest stretch of sustained pressure a chart can hand you. And here is what almost nobody says plainly. A Saturn period is not a punishment. It is a transaction. Saturn takes time, more time than you think is reasonable, and it pays in something that does not fall over afterwards. So the question is not whether it is hard. The question is what you are getting for it, and that is readable in your chart before the 19 years begin. So what Saturn actually is. What well-placed genuinely means for Saturn, and the 4 checks that decide it. What the 19 years deliver strong and weak. And then all 9 Bhuktis, the 9 sub-periods inside the 19 years, sometimes called Antardashas, with their exact lengths. Because this is 9 chapters, not 19 flat years, and they are not interchangeable. One thing to clear up straight away because it is the most common confusion in the subject. Sade Sati is not a Saturn Mahadasha. Sade Sati is a 7.5-year transit, Saturn crossing the 12th, 1st, and 2nd signs from your natal moon. It happens to everyone, roughly every 29 years in any dasha. The Shani Mahadasha is 19 years, and most people never get one at all. Which makes one thing immediately practical. You need to know whether you are in a Shani Mahadasha at all, and if you are, which Bhukti. Whether you get one, and when it lands, depends entirely on the moon's position at your birth, so this is not something you can work out in your head. Your free birth chart and full dasha timeline is at askthara.com. The link is in the description. Get it open, then keep watching, because from here, everything is specific. Start with what Saturn physically is, because it explains the character. Saturn is the slowest planet in the visible sky, about 29.5 years for one circuit, 2.5 years in every sign. Every other classical planet crosses your chart in months. Saturn takes years. And for the entire ancient world, it was the last planet anyone could see. Beyond Saturn, nothing. No Uranus, no Neptune, not until telescopes. Saturn was the edge of the known. That is not a metaphor bolted on afterwards. Saturn is the planet of limits because it literally was the limit. Now the one idea to take from this episode. Every other planet can give you something early. Jupiter before you have earned it, which is what grace means. Rahu at a scale you are not ready for. Venus on credit. Saturn is the only planet that will not let you have it early. It charges the full price in time, and it charges it first. But it pays in the one currency none of the others deal in: durability. What arrives in a Saturn period tends to still be standing 20 years later. So, is my Saturn good or bad is the wrong question. Ask whether it is charging a fair price, because a weak Saturn charges just as much and delivers late thin or not at all. Let's define it properly, because the phrase gets used constantly and almost never explained. 4 things decide it, and for Saturn, they do not carry equal weight. Most readings run them as if they did. 1. The sign. For Saturn, this is the big one. Saturn owns territory, and plenty of it. That is exactly what makes the sign the deciding check. Saturn rules Capricorn and Aquarius. In its own signs, it is at full strength and, more importantly, at ease. It still asks for work, but the work leads somewhere. Aquarius is the stronger of the two. It is Saturn's Multrikona sign, its home ground. Saturn is exalted in Libra. Worth understanding rather than memorizing, because it tells you what Saturn actually is. Libra is balance, contracts, fairness, weighing one thing against another, and Saturn's whole function is judgment, assessing what was earned and what wasn't. Put the judge in the courtroom and he does his best work. Exalted Saturn is not soft, it is fair. That is the difference. Saturn is debilitated in Aries. Same logic in reverse. Aries is Mars's sign, speed, impulse, do it now and ask later. That contradicts Saturn's only method, which is patience. A debilitated Saturn is a slow planet asked to hurry. The delay stays, and the durability goes. 2. The house. Saturn performs best in the Upachaya houses. Upachaya means growing, houses that improve under pressure rather than degrading. The 3rd, 6th, 10th, and 11th. The 10th is Saturn's showcase. Career, authority, the long climb, and a position that holds. The 6th turns Saturn's endurance on obstacles, debts, and competitors, and Saturn outlasts them. The 11th gives slow accumulated gain, the 3rd, sheer persistence. Saturn also gets digbala, directional strength, in the 7th house. Awkward for relationships, strong for the planet. It is hardest in the houses that need warmth. The 4th, home, mother, inner peace. The 5th, children and joy. And the 1st, where the weight lands directly on your own body and identity. 3. The dispositor. The planet ruling the sign Saturn sits in. It still matters. Saturn in Cancer means you check the moon. But for Saturn, it is one factor among 4, not the deciding one. 4. The company it keeps. Saturn with Mercury or Venus is measurably easier. Both are friends. Mercury gives it intelligence and paperwork, Venus comfort and some grace. Saturn with the moon is the heavy one. Cold on the emotions, seriousness, low mood, a childhood that grew up early. Saturn with the sun means friction with authority, often with the father. Saturn with Mars is cold meeting hot, harshness, disputes, accidents. Saturn with Jupiter is the sober combination, ethical, structural, good for anything institutional or legal. So, sign first, then house, then dispositor, then company. Run all 4 before you interpret a single year. When those checks come back strong, a Shani Mahadasha is the most constructive period in the chart. Not the most pleasant, the most constructive. What it brings: position earned by outlasting people rather than outshining them, and authority that arrives late and then does not leave. Mastery of an actual craft because Saturn is the only period long enough to get properly good at something. Land and property. Wins in anything administrative, legal, or institutional. Long contracts, debt cleared, responsibility for other people. Heavy, and also how status gets built. The signature of a strong Saturn period is this: at the start, you are carrying something you did not choose, and at the end, you are the person other people rely on. Very little of it feels good while it is happening. Almost all of it is still there afterwards. When those checks come back weak, debilitated or hostile sign, difficult house, damaged dispositor, hard company, the price gets charged anyway, and the delivery thins out. What it brings: delay that starts to read as rejection, effort that produces competence but not advancement, obligations arriving faster than capacity, so you are permanently slightly behind, work that holds up somebody else's structure, money that arrives and never accumulates, isolation, often chosen rather than imposed, because company costs energy you don't have, and on the body, Saturn's known territory: bones, joints, teeth, skin, and sleep. Note what is not on that list: catastrophe. A weak Saturn period is rarely dramatic. There is usually no single terrible event to point at. It is attrition, the slow erosion of morale by 100 small delays, which is why people underestimate it, and why knowing you are in one is most of the relief. Now the map. 9 Bhuktis in a fixed order, and one rule that makes the whole thing legible. Every Bhukti is a combination of 2 conditions, Saturn's and the Bhukti Lord's. 4 outcomes fall out of that. Both strong is where the real results land. Saturn, strong with a weak Bhukti lord, gives an opening you cannot execute. Saturn, weak with a strong Bhukti lord, gives protection and relief inside a difficult stretch, which is why nobody's 19 years are uniformly bad. Both weak is where the trouble concentrates. So don't ask, is this a good Bhukti? Ask what this Bhukti lord governs in your chart and what condition it is in. Here is the sequence. Saturn Dasha. Saturn Bhukti, the first 3 years. The heaviest onset of any Mahadasha. Nothing else opens with 3 straight years of its own lord. Everything slows, responsibility increases, and enthusiasm is not currency. This is the one Bhukti with a single condition to read, because the Dasha Lord and the Bhukti Lord are the same planet. Strong Saturn hands you something unglamorous and important. Weak Saturn gives you 3 years of pushing a door that opens inward. Saturn Dasha, Mercury Bhukti, years 3 to 5.7. Mercury is Saturn's friend, and this is the first real relief. The structure gets a brain. Contracts, skills, qualifications, negotiation. Strong Mercury is where the strategy that carries the rest of the 19 years gets written. Weak Mercury is the opposite. Miscommunication, a contract you should have read twice, clever plans that don't survive contact. Saturn Dasha, Ketu Bhukti, years 5.7 to 6.8. Ketu subtracts. Something you carried out of duty rather than desire ends. Strong Ketu makes that a clean release and often a turn toward something inward. Weak Ketu makes it feel like the ground going out, the same subtraction, without the sense that you chose it. Saturn Dasha Venus Bhukti, years 6.8 to just under 10, the longest of the 9, and Venus is Saturn's other friend. Strong Venus is the humane window. Money settles, comfort and relationships come back, and if anything gets built properly, it gets built here. Weak Venus, and the relief is thinner than it looks. Spending that outruns the income, or a comfort that doesn't actually hold. Either way, one caution. A long stretch of ease can feel like the Mahadasha is over. You are at the halfway mark. Saturn Dasha Sun Bhukti, years 10 to just under 11. The shortest of the 9. The sun is Saturn's enemy and, in the mythology, his father. Short, sharp, and about authority, a boss, a father, a government body. Strong sun, and the recognition finally becomes official. Weak sun, and it is a visible collision with someone who has power over you. Saturn Dasha Moon Bhukti, years 11 to 12 and a half. Saturn and the moon is the heavy pair, home, mother, sleep, mood, and the accumulated cost of 11 years of carrying things. Strong moon carries you through it. The support is there and you can feel it. Weak moon is where this becomes the emotional low water mark of the whole 19 years. Either way, don't make permanent decisions about relationships here. Saturn Dasha Mars Bhukti, years 12 and a half to 13.6. Cold meets hot. Strong Mars forces something long stalled through because Mars will not wait, decisive and usually productive. Weak Mars is friction without result, disputes, property trouble, haste against delay. And if Saturn is weak here too, this is the window with real injury or surgery risk. Both lords weak is where trouble concentrates. Saturn Dasha Rahu Bhukti, years 13.6 to 16 and a half. Ambition comes back after a decade of restraint, and it comes back hungry. Scale, foreign connection, the shortcut. This is the one place in the 19 years where overreach, not delay, is the real risk. Strong Rahu and the thing you built slowly finally gets its scale. Weak Rahu, and it is a shortcut taken against a 14-year foundation. Saturn Dasha Jupiter Bhukti, the final 2.5 years. The kindest exit of any Mahadasha. Strong Jupiter gives the previous 17 years a meaning. Teaching, mentoring, advising, law, children, and something you can hand to someone else. Weak Jupiter, and the meaning arrives slower. The relief is real, but it reads more like an ending than a graduation. Then Mercury takes over for 17 years. 4 things, all practical. First, run the 4 checks, sign first. Own sign, exalted, debilitated. That single reading tells you more than anything else, and most readings skip straight past it. Second, locate yourself in the 9. Year 2 and Year 8 are not the same problem, and treating them the same is the commonest mistake with this period. Third, the timing instruction. Do not judge the 19 years by the first 3. That opening is the heaviest in the system, and not representative of what follows. Build in the Mercury and Venus Bhuktis, roughly years 3 to 10. Don't launch in the Moon Bhukti, and don't gamble in the Rahu Bhukti. Fourth, do the boring thing on schedule. Saturn does not reward intensity. That is Mars's currency. It rewards the thing you did every week for 9 years, and 19 years is long enough for consistency to compound into something no amount of talent produces. Saturn does not decide whether you get there. It decides how long it takes and whether it holds. Next in this series, Ketu, 7 years, and the strangest of the 9. Get your free birth chart and dasha timeline at askthara.com and tell me in the comments which Mahadasha and which Bhukti you are in right now.